interpretación, encontrará usted eso en la parte inferior de su pantalla, abajo en la barra de tareas. Haga clic en el idioma que desee escuchar, español o Spanish, y luego esto es opcional para escuchar solo el idioma interpretado. Haga clic en silenciar el audio original o donde dice mute, M-U-T-E. Si está usando un teléfono inteligente, busque los tres puntitos, busque el icono del mundito para interpretación, seleccione el idioma español o Spanish y de nuevo para escuchar solo el idioma interpretado, haga clic en silenciar el audio original o donde dice mute, M-U-T-E, audio original. Muchas gracias y gracias por estar aquí esta noche con nosotros.
Okay, the interpretation is on, so please switch to the English channel if you need to, or the Spanish channel if you need to.
And I think we can move forward to the next slide. Oh, thank you. Just wanted to, I'll welcome, for those of you that just joined again, my name is Lujane. I'm with CBE as the East Oakland Clean Air Project Coordinator. And I'm here today with Esther Goolsby, our Northern California Program Co-Director, and Keita Price, and also with your co-chairs, Ayanna Johnson and Charles Reed. And we just really appreciate you all being here, and we hope that you've been having a nice start to the summer. And I'll go ahead and pass it off to Charles, who will go over our agenda for today.
Charles, you're currently muted. We can't hear you.
I'm back now. Thank you so much, everybody, for showing up again. And of course, my job is to read the agenda. So of course, we already did our welcome, our interpretation. That 6 to 9 minutes, 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock, youth co-chair position. Michaela, we will just be sending a statement on Michaela today because she will not be here to present. Then we will be doing our community vision and principles section, which will be for 15 minutes. Then we would do an overview of our strategy roadmap. I believe everybody had a great time doing that activity last month. Then we will have a Oakland General Plan update and environmental justice element from Kalia. And then of course we'll have our break. Then we'll go into our CERC boundary updates. Then we will talk about our East Oakland environmental justice announcements, and then our next steps and close out.
Now, our initial meeting agreements are notes for participation. Remember, people, one mic, one voice. So use your raised hand function under the reactions at the bottom of your screen. Grace ourselves for one another. Take care of yourself. Make sure you stretch, drink water, and don't forget to breathe. Community building on Zoom, use chat and the reaction emojis to inspire and encourage one another. For any questions throughout the meeting, please use the Zoom chat. CBE and BACMAD staff will be responding to all questions. And we'll go ahead and move to community building. Go ahead, Charles, give it to him.
So as our community building, please type your name into the chat, your name, pronouns. If you choose affiliated organization, CSC members, please raise your hand if you are not able to type into the chat, and we will have you speak aloud.
Thank you, Charles. So just a few updates I wanted to share with you, with everyone, and happy to answer any questions. So really great news that the extension letter was sent to CARB. To be able to request an extension until June 2024. And then a few more updates. If you could inform us if you'll be absent for future meetings, that would be really helpful. And then if you can submit your Form 700, and if you have any issues or you have questions with the form, please reach out to me and or Anish at the Air District, and we can assist you with filling that out. We also wanted to let you know that one CSC member, Guadalupe Gonzalez, resigned as of May 30th. So we currently have I believe 22 steering committee members. So we just wanted to let you all know that and make sure that that's transparent. And then we also wanted to ask that if you have any questions that you'd like to know in terms of health data and health information, if you could share that to Alicia Chow at the Air District, because we'll be compiling these questions for a future presentation that the Alameda County Public Health Department will be giving later on this summer or fall. So those are the main updates for today. Happy to see if anyone has any questions before moving forward.
Will the committee be privy to Guadalupe's resignation letter?
It's something that we can share. It's just a letter because of Guadalupe had wrote to us just having conflicts, like personal and work conflicts that were really difficult for her to be able to stay on the steering committee. And we can share that. Just we would need to confirm with Guadalupe that that's okay. But yeah, thank you for asking, Shamar. Any other questions? Okay, and I can pass it to whoever's next. Thank you.
Thanks, Lou Jane. Good evening, everyone. Alicia Chow here from the Air District's Air Quality Planning, and wanted to show you our rough timeline. And you've seen this in past steering committee meetings, but the difference here is we updated the timeline to reflect the milestones that we have worked on and the milestones that we are looking forward to working on into the summer of 2024. So as Lou Jane mentioned, the extension letter was sent out to the California Air Resources Board. So our timeline is extended to summer of 2024. And we are currently in spring of 2023 with the SERP emissions inventory boundary. And so I can pass it to whoever's next.
And that would be Ayana.
Yeah, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. As you know, our youth co-chair position is open. Michaela Patton was supposed to be here today. She was unable to attend because of scheduling conflicts. However, she has sent a statement and you guys will be receiving it via email, and she will be at our July CSC meeting and go ahead and back her statement. So we'll hear from her soon. Thank you guys, ladies and gentlemen.
And so we want to present to you again the SERP Community Vision and Principles exercise. Today, we will be revisiting what those statements look like and sound like, and we will be asking you guys, how do you feel about it? And so if you would like to, you can roll it now. So as you know, we had the exercise to draft our vision statement. And I believe it was a very engaging and vigorous exercise. And I love the enthusiasm people gave. And this is what we came up with. We seek to create a future East Oakland that includes health, accountability, transparency, and justice. Our vision includes healthy and clean air, streets, schools, and industries, and parks in this vision. Industry and other polluters are held accountable for their actions and are committed to reducing the harm they have caused to impacted and neglected East Oakland neighborhoods. Government agencies are accountable to us and transparent in their actions by enforcing health protective laws and collaborating with us to remove existing pollution and future pollution sources from our neighborhoods. We prioritize justice and equity in our community by working to end structural racism, such as redlining, and to create a more equitable society where everyone benefits from progress and environmental justice. Ultimately, we envision a future where transparency, trust, and mutual responsibility is realized, and where every resident can live, work, and play in a healthy and sustainable East Oakland. So, how do you guys feel about that? I hope you love it.
Well, we also have our draft principles statement. The East Oakland Community Steering Committee is committed to these principles as a foundation for our work together in building East Oakland's community emission reduction plan. CERP expresses justice and equality. We believe in the principles of environmental justice. Our right to raise our children in a healthy environment and support those who have been harmed by pollution in East Oakland. We seek equitable investment in communities and respect for East Oakland neighborhoods, identity, and culture. We recognize that what we do now affects our future generations. So collaboration and communication. We are stronger when we work together. Our partners include all members of East Oakland community, government agencies, and industry. The CERP is a community-driven decision-making process. We're working together to define equity and build cleaner and healthier futures for all. So, information sharing and transparency. We are committed to building trust and understanding through education, transparency, and information sharing. We value the different experiences and perspective of our fellow community members. To build our CERP, we strive to have clear communication about timelines, resources, and logistics that effectively communicated and relayed back to community members. So our accountability and solutions, we believe in holding individuals, government, and industries accountable for their actions. By promoting transparency and mutual responsibility, we can move towards our shared goals and a CERP that addresses community concerns and identify strategies that reduce pollution in East Oakland.
So a reminder of the development process. It was started out with small group activity at CSC meeting number 7, and it was documented in our Jamboard. The co-chairs and co-lead led small group, co-chairs and co-lead small groups met to develop the draft division and principles. We identified the most common themes from the Jamboard exercise. B, then we wrote and edited a draft vision and principles for CSC review and comment. Then we drafted the vision statement and principles presented at CSC meeting number 8. And the deadline for CSC members to provide comments and suggested edits was Sunday, May 21st. So we wanted to make sure that we gave everybody ample opportunity to read it and to send a comment.
Before we move forward, are there any questions?
And these questions are also open for our community members, regular community members.
Shamar, I see you put something in chat. Did you want to go ahead and express that verbally?
Shamar, if you're speaking, we can't hear you.
I believe he said he's
Got it,
gonna
got
step
it.
back. I think.
Okay.
So
And
we're
let
gonna
us-
go ahead and move forward.
Okay. So
So
Charles,
now,
go for
oh,
it.
go ahead.
No, go for it. I was gonna say it was your turn.
Okay, so now we want to have, or we want to find out from everybody if you're ready for the roll call vote. And this roll call vote will be us saying we are willing to adopt this CERP vision and principles, or that we are not. And so if you are ready to adopt the CERP vision and principle statement, please say yes. And if you are not, then please say no.
Charles, we have Kalila's hand up.
Okay. And Kalia, if you please.
This is just a technical question on the vision statement. If we could just see that slide really quick. Is this supposed to be the impacts of redlining, since redlining is not a practice that is currently like happening? Just wanted to clarify if that was the case, but if not, then that's okay as well.
So I will defer to staff on the actual language.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Kalila. That's a great question. I agree that I think it would be more clear if it said such as the impacts of redlining, and it's used as an example of what structural racism is, and so redlining is a part of that. So I think we could reword it to say, by working to end structural racism, such as the impacts of redlining. Does that sound good to you?
Yes.
And thank you, Kalia, for asking that question, because that's what we're looking for, you guys. We want everybody, if you have a question, please ask it while we had an opportunity and experts here to answer it. And so, Shamar, you were in the chat. So is there something that you would like to add before this roll call?
I mean, I just want to say briefly, this is what makes Zoom really difficult for me as someone that has never actually had to work through Zoom on a regular basis. Like, I don't know who else is in the room right now. If nobody else is talking, no one else is in the chat, I'm hearing the same folks say the same things. So, I mean, if I'm in here alone with just y'all, I don't know what the point is. And if, you know, if folks are just here to listen and learn, that's cool too. But like, I don't know what's going on. I'm a little bit lost because I can't actually see faces because I'm just looking at the presentation. I'm literally not hearing anyone else say anything.
And you know what, Shamar? I agree with that. If you guys have something to say, please put it on the floor. If you see what's going on the East Coast, you see that they can barely see or breathe because of what's happening in Canada. We're trying to prevent that from happening here. We are building something from the ground up. So it's going to take us collectively to figure this out before it's too late. So thank you, Shamar, for bringing that to our attention. If you guys have anything to say, please bring it to the table.
Cynthia, thank you for raising your hand, and we waiting to listen to you. Come on.
Thank you, everyone. I think I'm just thinking of like, what is our process? So are we thinking like this vision statement is created, we vote on it, and then then do we get to like something else? I guess like maybe, I don't know if I'm like understanding what, like I'm reading what Shamir is saying, and a part of me is like, because I do so much like process and operations, I'm just trying to understand like, is this needing to be done in order to get into like an actual report, into us getting deep into the work? That's more of my question.
And Gabrielle, you have a question? We will make Cynthia, I just want you to know that this is part of the work that we're doing. That as a vision statement, we want to be able to know what we're working for and working towards, and what principles we're going to use and to guide us to that place. And so this is just another step in the process of cementing what our vision is and how we're going to get there. And if anyone else would like to add on to that, please do.
This is just the paperwork portion of what we're gonna do. Before we start making decisions and moving forward collectively, they want it in writing how we're gonna move. So this is what we're doing as a unit and voting on as a unit. After that, then that's when the action come in. But they want to see it in writing first. So we're deciding what we're doing collectively in writing, and then we move forward.
Can I ask something in all due respect? And I see a couple hands on the floor as well, but if folks will just indulge me for a moment.
Go ahead, Shamar, since you started this conversation, and Gabrielle, and then Marina, and then Alicia will be next.
Yeah, and just with regards to the timeline, like I'm looking at this timeline, I'm looking at this vision, and this vision seems to have expanded so far beyond what AB 617 is, and we only have a year to come up with this. And so I question the feasibility of getting all of those things done, creating a plan that incorporates all of that stuff in the time that we have available. Especially, again, when what we're here for, what the funding and the support is for something very specific, which is AB 617. And so again, I'm not disagreeing or even necessarily wanting to dive into each of those individual things around racial, economic justice, and all the other hyphenated justices, right? Like looking at air quality and the health impacts that have resulted from it over the decades that regulators like BACMUD have existed and have reduced. Overall, you know, the air is much different than it was 40 years ago when BACMUD was founded. But in places like East and West Oakland, those impacts haven't really reached us. And so we're specifically with them trying to figure out how they can expand their reach. And if we want to talk about all these other things, we have other regulators, we have other agencies, we have other targets that we can address that with. You know, there's city council, there's, you know, every number of avenues to address these other things. But while we have BACMUD at the table, let's talk about air quality, let's talk about pollution, let's talk about the specific health impacts that result from the things that, again, BACMUD is supposed to be and has successfully regulated elsewhere, but hasn't done in our community and many others like us within their district. So I apologize. I'm going to try to not speak at all the rest of the meeting. I can't wait to hear everybody else.
Thank you. And Charles, I just want to note that Alicia and Allison from the Air District both have their hands up. I think they'd like to respond.
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to make sure we keep everybody in line.
Thank you, Deanna. Thank you all for your comments. So I wanted to remind folks of the timeline here. It's a rough timeline we have. We've been you know, revising it as we're moving through this process. And back in winter, I would say back in March, Allison and I presented the vision and principles of the SERP and what that is. It is really, a vision is considered blue sky thinking. It's how the Community Steering Committee wants to picture their future for this plan. So it's the foundation of this collaborative process in which the community creates the future they want. And then the principles are the core values that you set to achieve that vision. And so that is kind of the foundation for the SERP, and all the elements that you see within the milestones that are upcoming are the things that we will be working on, the things that we will be presenting to you all. And it'll be grounded in your shared vision and principles for this SERP. So hope that's a little bit clearer for you all. I know we took a little bit of time because we went through a Jamboard exercise with you all to get all of your blue sky thinking and thoughts and really good ideas for what you want to see for East Oakland's future in air quality. So we wanted to bring that back to you, make sure that we heard what you all said. And so that's why you see the draft vision and the draft principles. Those are the things that you all created together. And that's the future you want to see for this SERP. So happy to answer any more questions too.
Thank you, Alicia. And I do believe that the order was Allison next, then Merica, then Gabrielle, then Marina.
Thanks, Charles. Alicia did a great job. I don't need to add anything, so I'll pass.
Okay, so that means Merica, you had a mic.
Thank you. This is Marika, and I think I understand where Shamar is coming from. Correct me if I'm wrong. I do also feel the vision is pretty broad, and I understand what I just heard about like blue sky or whatever, like, we're gonna like basically find world peace or whatever. But it would be nice if it were more narrowed down to really just focus on how are we going to reduce emissions in East Oakland, period. And I do think the fear and the worry, at least of mine, is that if we are focused on all of these other things, that we can lose sight of just focusing on reducing emissions, which is kind of the point of why I joined this process. And I thought I heard even Shamar saying like there are other organizations and folks focused on the other parts that were listed in the vision. And I do think that is true. So yeah, that's just kind of my 2 cents here.
And thank you so much, because everybody's opinion and freedom of thought is valued. And so that's really a good point that you made. But think of this, in the fact that this SERP and this work has not been defined yet. And that's what we're doing. We're defining this work. And so it's up to us to define what this pollution reduction plan is really, what it means to us. And so that's why we have the blue sky thinking. Gabrielle, would you like to go, please?
Yeah, so I missed the deadline to comment, and I would have wanted to comment on it. I was trying to see, I noticed that there was an email that went out with the link, which was well after the meeting happened, and there wasn't a reminder after that. And I just want to say that if somebody had sent a reminder, I probably would have actually provided some feedback. It's just that there's a lot going on, and when something happens weeks after the meeting, so that our minds are no longer on that thing, and then there isn't a reminder, then people are not going to get a chance. So if you're wondering why only one person commented, it might be because people didn't get that email or weren't reminded, or we're not, it's just something to think about for the future. I will vote yes on it to avoid a necessary delay, but I'm not happy about the fact that I didn't get to comment on it. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Gabrielle. And I would suggest for any of us that if you ever feel uncomfortable about voting, then stand your ground about why you feel that way. And if you feel comfortable enough, abstain, but at least let us know where you're coming from. And I appreciate you having the courage to speak your truth. And now, Marina.
Charles, I'm sorry, 1 second.
No oigo la interpretación.
Give us 1 second. For Spanish interpreters, Jennifer and Maria, whose turn is it? We can't hear any of the Spanish interpretation.
Thanks for catching that, Diana.
No, well, Marina messaged.
I don't see them in the room.
Marina, ¿la puede escuchar ahora? Yo la puedo escuchar.
Sí, okay.
Okay, sorry about that, Charles. Lo siento, Marina. Okay, Marina, was there something else you also wanted to share?
Sí, yo lo que quería decir.
Yes, what I wanted to share with you guys is that our vision is already written, and I agree that the agencies are actually supporting us, working with us and impulsing this project, and we should consider that funds are already established for this work because the state gave us this fund, so we can go ahead and establish all of these investigations. And I want to continue. I feel that we need to continue. The fact that we're going to make it, we're going to do it. I mean, I know that everything takes time, right? We have established a lot of work here, and we have established certain like chemicals, particles, monitoring them. So I feel that all of us, we can do something, especially for our communities that are impacted through, for example, like our kids, right, that have asthma. We want to find out, where does this come from? So I feel that we should continue with our vision. All of us united, we can definitely do a good job. Thank you.
And then Charles, I see Lujane's hand is up.
Yes, Luzane, after we will see where we stand.
Thank you, Charles. Yeah, I just wanted to respond to Shamar's comment about redlining and how it's connected to today. And so I just wanted to highlight that the majority of redlined areas throughout cities, not just in Oakland, cities across the United States, that's where all of the toxic facilities often are, where industries are. And so it's directly connected to pollution and the health impacts that occur because of that pollution. And so in the brainstorm activity of the vision and principles, a common theme that we saw was that structural racism was something that needs to be addressed. And so that's why it was incorporated in the vision, and why redlining was used in it as an example.
Yeah, and I get that. And I guess, again, going back to my point, that feels like kind of common knowledge at this point, at least amongst folks who are talking about social justice, talking about environmental justice. But, again, we keep talking about industry, we keep talking about polluters, but we also have regulators, right, who are in place because this isn't something new. Industry destroyed air quality, water quality, environmental quality in general for basically the first century of this country's history, right? And at a certain point, we had the wherewithal, at least for some communities, to put regulators in place to set rules, to enforce those rules, and to improve. And improvements have been incredible. Like, talk to anyone. Like, we could talk about papers, and we could keep, this stuff. It's like, we could talk about redlining in theory, but talk to someone who's lived in Oakland for 94 years, as I have, who remembers when, forget all the bike lanes and walking paths along the bay was black because we were just dumping straight sludge into it, right? The regulators found ways to improve the way we were treating our water to meet the standards of the laws that were put in place. And thankfully, that's one situation where we kind of all have to share the same impacts. And so you can't really, whereas air, we have these localized impacts. We know what happens, and we know that regulators, again, to your point, in the same way that communities target communities like ours because we're vulnerable, regulators ignore constantly and continue to ignore communities like ours because we look the way we do. So we understand what redlining is, and this is an opportunity to hold an agency that is letting, they're encouraging that legacy. They are part of the legacy. Every day that Backmud doesn't serve East Oakland the way they serve North Oakland, the way they serve the Oakland Hills, the way they serve Berkeley, is another day that legacy continues because of the way that Backmud does their work, which is why legislators approved AB 617. That's why we're all here. That's why at least I'm here. So again, we can all talk about this stuff, big picture, social justice, rah, 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 offline. But in the hour or two we have once a month for the next however many months, not years, that it's going to take to reverse some of these things, let's take the one piece that we do have. We have funding to do this. And so again, maybe this is, again, we're just doing this, to Ayana's point, just to get through it, and we're going to start having the real conversation next week. But this obsession doesn't give me any confidence that that's actually what we're going to do. It just seems like we're creating paper and reports and things that look good to the grantees and the funders, and that everyone can pat themselves in the back. But if you don't live in East Oakland, if you haven't been calling Backmud, making reports and having them ignored, if you haven't been living here and seeing quality deteriorate, then it's not that serious, because you live in a community where Backmud works. We live in a community where it doesn't. We want to see that change. And so any minute that we're spending not doing that, I just can't. And so, again, I'm just directly responding to you because you responded to me. Stepping back.
And thank you once again, Shamar. Like we say, this is the space for us to share our freedom of thought with each other, and for us to take in those thoughts. And listening to those thoughts, it seems to me like you guys are you ready to vote on this, or do you feel like we need to discuss it more since you want to get down to work? Because if you really want to get down to work, let's decide how we gonna proceed.
I think we are ready to vote. And I appreciate the time that we've taken to lay down the foundation and create the vision and principles.
And who was that speaking?
This is Andrea. I'm a resident.
Thank you so much for voicing that. And I'd like to bring that up to everyone. So let's proceed on this roll call vote.
All right, Charles, then. So do you approve of the SERP vision statement and principles? Yes or no? I'm going to be doing the roll call as I've done in the past. Ayana Johnson. Ayana, we can't hear you.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Andrea Pineda. Absent. Andrea?
Yes.
Thank you. Carol is absent. Charles?
Yes.
Thank you. Cynthia?
Yes.
Thank you. Danny?
Yes.
Thank you. Gabrielle? Abstain. Abstain, thank you. Jamaica,
Yes.
thank you. Jamie,
Yes.
thank you. Jasmine is absent. Kalila,
Yes.
thank you. Kimmy, absent.
Yes, this is Tram on behalf of Kimmy.
Thank you. Marina,
Sí, sí.
thank you.
Yes.
Marika,
Yes.
thank you. Miss Cecilia, Miss Cecilia, I'm gonna see if I can click your unmute button. Miss Cecilia,
Yes.
thank you.
Hi, Miss Cecilia.
Michaela is absent. Jerry, absent. Shamar,
Same.
abstain. Thank you. Susan,
Yes.
thank you. Bill, abstain. Sochil is absent. Erika,
Yes.
thank you. So we had 14 yeses, 3 people abstaining, and 6 people absent. Majority is yes. So passing it back to you, Charles.
Thank you guys once again. We making progress. I know it seems sometimes like it's slow, but whenever you building something from the ground up, it takes time. And we want to make sure our foundation is solid. And so if you would like to go to that next, yes, there we go. And so now I will be passing it off to Lujane from CBE to give us an overview of our strategy development. Take it away, Lujane.
Thank you so much, Charles. So in this is going to be a pretty brief overview of strategy development tonight. But in July, my colleague Kim Ryan, who's our staff researcher at CBE, focusing on AB 617, will be giving a more detailed overview of strategy development. And this is exciting because this is where we're actually talking about what strategies do we want to have in our SERP. So we were able to, draft the vision and principles, which guides our strategies, but this is where the specific actions that we want to see and changes that we want to see come in. And then if you could go to the next slide. So the outline of this presentation is just going to cover how did we get here, and then I'll be covering the strategy-focused approach that CBE has been working on, and then presenting a draft outline of the strategy roadmap. And then I'm going to have, there'll be about like 5 minutes for questions and comments, and then next steps that I'll share with you. Next slide. So how did we get here? As many of you know, and many of you have been involved with community organizing around environmental justice issues in East Oakland. And starting in the early 2000s, CBE was able to develop community-based campaigns around specific community concerns in regards to facilities and industries in East Oakland. And in 2008 to 2010, there were multiple studies that CBE conducted that I can share with you that addressed the cumulative impacts of pollution, environmental justice issues, and then the structural gaps in regulatory agencies. Like Shamar was saying, what are the gaps in government? Where is government not being accountable to certain actions and enforcement? And so all of these aspects of environmental justice is something that CBE has worked with community members to evaluate. And then just to the right, this just shows our framework in terms of community organizing, science, and legal advocacy. And the next slide. So starting in summer 2021, when CBE decided to pursue work related to AB 617, we started having conversations with the Air Districts about potentially launching a CERP process in East Oakland. And this work included addressing air quality concerns, sources of pollution, and identifying what existing data is there, and then what are the gaps in information that we don't have. And also a crucial part of this was designing the community steering committee. We really wanted to make sure that this process was community driven and community led, and that it wasn't just CBE and the Air District working on this. So you all are a huge and vital component of this process. And the next slide. And so I'm not sure if we've kind of mentioned it, but we've the idea of the strategy first approach started in the winter and then later in the spring of 2022. And what that means is that the Air District will dedicate resources to characterize and assess high priority emissions. And these are identified, and these have been identified by CBE, by community members, local community partners. And so the goal of a strategy first approach is to address high priority sources and to also act on any issues, say if a facility is emitting more than an allowable amount, that there's an action before the CERP is developed. And then next slide. And so then we kind of shifted the language to a strategy focused approach. And what that means is that we're organizing and we're focusing on known sources of pollution. And there's a list that I'm going to share with you on specific facilities that have been identified that we've been working on better understanding these facilities, what they're emitting, and what needs to happen. And this started in 2008, and this shows to the right an image of community members monitoring air quality at ABNI, which was shut down because of community members and CBE advocating against the foundry. And this approach also includes highlighting concerns by community voices and lived experiences, and then advocating for a set of actions that address each pollution concern and the impacts related to them, like health impacts, for example. And the next slide. So this shows the outline of the strategy roadmap. And this is something that isn't fixed. Definitely we'll welcome all of your questions on this, and it's an iterative process. But what we've developed so far is that in step 1, we identify the key issues and the pollution sources. Then 2, conduct early actions. Step 3 is the actual strategy development. And then step 4, strategy review and selection. And then step 5, implementation and interagency coordination. And so all of you are a huge part of step 1 through 4. And I just want to clarify that you won't be necessarily conducting early actions or monitoring emissions at a facility, but you will be directly informing what early actions happen. And then next slide. So there's some terms that I use that I just want to clarify for everyone. And so I'd mentioned problem statements. And so problem statements, essentially what it does, it identifies a specific facility or pollution concern. And this is what informs early actions. And so, for example, there's a working list of problem statements. There are 8 so far that Kim has been working on. And this list can definitely grow if there's other concerns that you all have. Our team will do work to create a problem statement around it. So there's ABNI Foundry, Argent Materials, the crematorium, Gallagher and Burke, Sterling Environmental, the Oakland International Airport expansion, and RNA Trucking. And so an early action addresses a problem statement and high priority emission sources. And as I had mentioned previously, the goal is to implement the early action before the SERP is approved. So that way we're not waiting until summer 2024 to act on something. If there's an issue, we want to address it immediately. And this allows us to collaborate with each other early on rather than after the SERP is approved and implemented. And then next slide. And I'm just going to cover what are strategies. So strategies are long-term actions that we develop together through the SERP process. They include clear goals and metrics for achieving and measuring emissions reductions. They're going to be drafted by you all, which is really exciting. And potentially, we might be inspired by other communities like West Oakland. They actually had 89 strategies in their plan. So that's just an example. There might be strategies that we're interested in looking into. And then ultimately, the strategies are selected by you all and adopted in the final SERP in summer 2024. And then next slide. So I just wanted to have some time to for you all to share any questions that you have. All of these questions our team is going to share with Kim Ryan, our staff researcher, and she'll be coming to our next meeting in July to directly answer your questions and give a more detailed presentation. And I see, Charles, that you have your hand.
Oh, no, I want to give the floor to any other community member that would like to speak first. I just wanted to make sure I was in line.
Thank you.
So please, we encourage anyone, one of our steering committee members or members of the public. If there's a question that you have about this process, please raise your hand and you'll definitely get called on.
And one thing that I wanted to note, thank you, Charles, if that was a lot of information that I just shared with you all. So if you want to sit with it, take some time, you can always email me and I'll share that with Kim. And we were thinking that something that could be helpful is to develop a like an FAQ document to answer all of your questions that you might have.
I see that Jamie's hand is up.
Cynthia?
So you mentioned that West Oakland had like 82 strategies, and I think Richmond's working on a plan. I'm curious if there's a way that we could kind of do an analysis of all the plans and strategies to see if there's some really common themes or things that we could glean from all the other communities that we might want to just shortcut and say, yep, that's something we know is a priority in our community too.
Yeah, that's such a great question. We definitely, if that's of interest to everyone, we could have a session where we analyze various plans and have kind of like a World Cafe exercise where we talk about it, we analyze the plans and evaluate their strategies. So that's a really great, yeah, thank you for raising that, and I'll share that with Kim as well.
Keep us from reinventing the wheel.
Yeah, definitely.
Do we have any more hands raised?
And I also just want to know, Jamaica also asked a question in the chat, and just for clarification, all of those early actions came from East Oakland community, right?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jamaica. So all of those, all of the problem statements, those 8 facilities that I listed, those all came from community members in East Oakland. And all of those facilities are located in East Oakland. But that list is not fixed. Like if you all have come to consensus that there's other facilities of concern that aren't on that list, it's an open list. It's not fixed.
So any other questions? So for one, I would like to bring up the fact that yes, ABI is leaving, and that would look like a great victory on the surface. But if you recognize that Amazon would be taking their place, and now we would have increased truck traffic, then those are things that we need to remedy and try to figure out how can we create a situation where instead of them being able to replace a polluter with another different kind of polluter, that we replace it with a green workforce development situation like that. So I'm wondering, where is the SERP going to be able to flex its muscle and be able to have the those zoning measures written in a way where it accommodates us for winning, for actually getting the victory, instead of it being a hollow victory in practice.
That's a really great question, Charles. And we'll take note of that. I know I think we're at time, but I also want to make sure, Marika, to answer your question, or to have your question raised.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to say that shutting down AB&I is a huge victory. It's not just a service victory. Like, they've been polluting for how long? So to me, that is a huge victory that does deserve to be celebrated. And I also wanted to say that, yeah, we definitely do need to be on top of what moves into that space. And if I'm not mistaken, Amazon has started moving in a different location. But even still, that's still too close to home. So yeah, I'm just kind of like, let's not downplay the victory with AB&I, because that was huge, because they've been polluting for over 100 years. That was a huge victory, is my whole point. And yeah, we do need to be on top of how that land is used and who's going to be responsible for cleaning it up and making sure all of the pollutants are out of the soil and not just covered or built on top of.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thank you for raising that, Marika. It was a really big win and victory for East Oakland. So I know we're at time with this. We're also taking note of all of your questions in the chat. And just to share again, Kim will be here in July. And in the meantime, if you do have questions, please reach out to me. I'll put my email in the chat, and we'll forward all of your questions over to Kim. But thank you so much.
A great exercise, everybody. And now we will be passing it off to Kalia Haynes from the city of Oakland, who will be giving us an Oakland General Plan update and the environmental justice elements involved. So Kalia, if you're ready, please go ahead and do your thing.
Hi, good evening, everyone. This is Kalia Haynes, City of Oakland Planning Department. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and just go through a short presentation about some of the strategies in the EJ element that relate to AB 617. Are you able to see the screen?
Yes.
Cool. Okay. Excuse me. Okay, there we go. Okay, so basically, the environmental justice element, which is out for public review right now, does four main things. It identifies EJ communities, it creates goals, policies, and actions that aim to reduce health risks in EJ communities, to promote community engagement and community feedback in the decision-making process, as well as identify programs that prioritize the needs of EJ communities. So I went over much of the process last time,
but just a refresher on the environmental justice communities map that we're working with. The areas that are hatched in like the light pink color are current EJ communities. There are about 48 census tracts that are currently identified as EJ communities. So for this short presentation, we're going to be focused mostly on EJ element goal 1, which is about reducing and mitigating the effects of pollution on sensitive land uses. And so, you know, this is I think this is our first goal, and it's a goal that's most related to the AB 617 mission. And so there are 19 policies and 12 actions under this goal. Some of them have to do with addressing land use, some of them have to do with addressing interagency collaboration and other things. And so for this presentation, I'll be focused mostly on the land use strategies. And I know CBE will be doing another presentation at another time about all the other actions and policies. Okay, so there are 5 policies that are directly related to land use. And so we'll just go through them one by one, and I'll go through the actions, and then we'll just have a little bit of time to talk about feedback about them. So, excuse me, the first policy is about toxic air contaminants. It's basically reducing the public exposure to toxic air contaminants through land use and transportation strategies, focusing on EJ communities. The next one is about ensuring that heavy industrial uses are adequately buffered from sensitive receptors such as schools, residential areas, healthcare facilities, etc. And EJ 1.4 is about developing enhanced performance standards that will be applicable to new industrial and commercial developments. And these standards would work to mitigate and minimize the adverse effects related to air quality, noise, or safety on existing residential communities. The next one is about developing more stringent permitting standards and limiting the number of variances that the planning department issues for high intensity industrial or commercial land uses. And the last one is about enhancing code enforcement to address illegal land uses and other activities that are causing pollution. Okay, and so here are some of the actions associated with those land use strategies. The first is about amending the planning code to reduce the impact of industrial and truck-related businesses on residential communities. And I just want to say that this action is already underway through some of the zoning amendments that we proposed for the phase 1 of the general plan update. I remember we shared about this maybe I think 2 meetings ago, but we're in the process right now of taking some amendments through Planning Commission and City Council that directly focus on reducing the impact of truck-related businesses. The next action is about studying the feasibility of an amortization ordinance. And so basically, an amortization ordinance is a plan for phasing out non-conforming land uses, which could be like existing polluters over time. And so, you know, there is some precedent for this in California. National City in the San Diego area has established one of these ordinances, and they're actively trying to phase out polluters like, you know, auto cleaning facilities and stuff like that. The next action is around prioritizing and implementing vegetative buffer projects. And so some of these vegetative buffer projects have already been identified in plans like the East Oakland Neighborhood Initiative and the West Oakland Community Action Plan, which is the AB 617 plan for West Oakland. And the next action is to use phase 2 of the general plan update, which will be starting the fall of this year, to evaluate residential industrial conflicts, especially in West and East Oakland, through the land use and transportation element, and develop measures to limit creating additional residential development in high polluting areas and making sure there's adequate buffers between the existing industry and residential land uses. So those are all the ones that are related to land use.
let's go to the next. Oops. Okay, and so we can take some time now to discuss, if I think we still have some time, right, facilitators, to discuss these policies and actions. And I can stop sharing my screen if that's helpful.
So thank you, Kalia, for that presentation. And we want to ask all of our steering committee members and our members of the public, do you have any questions after hearing Kalia's presentation? And even if it's just to give us give her a thumbs up for presenting a great presentation, we want to hear from you.
I'll speak. I think it was a great presentation as always. And my question is, in the other groups, are they doing all of the work together, like each component, or were there breakout groups working on the different components separately? Because that just seems like a lot. Yeah.
Kalia,
Thanks, Andrea. Could you just clarify real quick what other groups you were talking about?
No, like the I'm thinking of the West Oakland group, but did they work on each component separately, or did they address each strategy altogether?
Sure. So these policies and actions are taken from the draft that's out right now for the environmental justice element. And so some of the policies and actions that are in here, they reference like things that are in other plans, such as like the East Oakland Neighborhood Initiative and the West Oakland Community Action Plan. And so, in the WOCAP, there were a lot of strategies around addressing truck emissions, in West Oakland in particular. And so as part of the general plan update, we've taken those strategies and not just applying them to West Oakland, but citywide. I hope that is a good answer.
And to follow up on that, Kalia, because I was a part of that, we broke down into committees and addressed the different strategies through committees. So that made us be able to get, I think we had 3 or 4 different committees. So that allowed us to get that much more work done at the same time. And I believe, Marina, you have your hand up. Oh, I didn't mean to step on you, Kalia. My bad. You can go ahead and run it from now on. Marina.
Sí, puedo hablar entonces. Ay. Marina. Ajá. Mira, pues estoy, ¿verdad? Oyendo sobre el plan del Oakland, ¿verdad? Del
So I'm
2045.
hearing about the Oakland plan in 2045. A lot of times I feel that communities are not aware of the plan that we are discussing, right? These 5 policies or the policies that are going on in the city. So our community needs more than information so they can actually participate, especially because it has happened to me that, for example, I go to the meetings and
Que uno
there's
esté ahí presente, ahí se quede,
no interpretation.
escuchas nada, no entiendes nada porque no estás.
So even if
Entonces,
we're there, if we're in person and we want to participate, because it's not in our language. So a lot of our community is not even aware of all of these policies and all of this that's going on in the city of Oakland. We need more information, and not just information, but to have interpretation in our language or a presentation in our language. And sometimes we want to participate, we want to be a part of the city of Oakland. I've always liked to be involved in all of this, right? But sometimes I see it myself I'm gonna say it. I've been in meetings with the city, and the city has actually failed me because there's no interpretation. So even if I go, I don't understand. So how are we supposed to know? To all the people that just speak Spanish, let's say that everyone that speaks English, right? We put you in a room and then we're all speaking Spanish and you're just sitting there. What do you guys understand? So I want to ask, have there be interpretation when you guys have these meetings from the city, and also inform community so the communities know what the city is doing with different policies. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Marina. That's a really good point. So we had an event, I think that was shared with this group last time. On Tuesday, we had a virtual town hall that had translation, and I will send it out to the facilitators when we have the recording ready, so that you and other members of the community will be able to listen to the presentation in Spanish. We'll be having another event next Wednesday, June 14th, at the Oakland Main Library, and that we'll be having the materials in Spanish and Chinese. And I know the city does need to do a better job at having interpretation consistently. As part of this general plan, we definitely try to have definitely for virtual events, interpretation in Spanish. Sometimes it's a bit trickier for in-person events. So I think, this is definitely good feedback, and, we'll try to make sure that, especially in the next phase, when we do more around land use and transportation, that we do have an adequate budget for in-person interpretation in our phase 2. But yeah, also there will be also, just as an FYI, there's also childcare and Chinese and Spanish materials at the meeting next Wednesday. Gabrielle.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have some, and please forgive me if I missed it, if it was on there. One thing, this seems a little niche, but one thing I'm thinking about is how it's really hard to create a community garden or do land use. We're talking about land use that's bad for the community, but there are a lot of ways of using land that are really beneficial to the community that are really hard to get permits for right now. And there are a lot of projects that are struggling just to get permits to grow food for the community.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's a great question. So part of the environmental justice element is addressing multiple things, one of them being improving food access and food security. And I'll post the specific policy in the chat. We didn't go over it this time, but there are specific policies around ensuring that we revise our permitting standards to make things like urban gardens, vertical farming, and other things that are different options to grow food more accessible. And that's something that is a short-term strategy that we'll be studying in phase 2 of the general plan update, which is set to start this fall, this end of the summer, early fall. So yeah, definitely that's something that we heard a lot of feedback about during the engagement process, and that we're hoping, this plan will address. Not hoping, putting strategies in for this plan to address.
Thanks,
Tanya?
I did want to say that I support the community gardens, and it's something that we really do need to investigate further as a land use remedy for our communities. And go ahead, Tanya.
Hello, I'm wondering if you could explain to us the function of the city's environmental service department. Like, what is it that they do currently, and if there's going to be any changes in how they're going to function based on the environmental justice element, or any expansion of their function. Thank
you. Yeah, thank you. That's a good question. So the Environmental Services Division is a division under Public Works, and so they
I'm not super familiar with all of their setup, but they have programs like the enforcement officers that help sort of like, with like reporting on illegal dumping and things like that. The general plan update, while it's a plan that the planning department writes, it is a plan that basically, identifies like roles for pretty much all city departments and other agencies that are related. And so there are different actions and strategies that are specifically things that Public Works will be leading. And so, there are a number of strategies around illegal dumping and community education that I think would definitely fall in the realm of Public Works Environmental Services Division as like a co-lead with that strategy with the city planning department.
Okay, did you say that environmental services has inspectors, that there are inspectors in that department?
Yeah, so there's like there are community, sort of a community-driven team called, I'm sorry, I'm like not remembering what the exact acronym stands for, but it's EEO. And so they are out of the Environmental Services Division.
Kalila, environmental enforcement officers.
Thank you. That definitely, yeah, environmental enforcement officers.
So, Kalia, would you be open to any of our steering committee members sending questions to you to find out more and be more in depth, especially who are these community enforcement, environmental enforcement officers? How do they work? And how do we access them for to check out issues in our community? So could you follow up with questions like that for the rest of us?
Yes, I'll put my email in the chat again. I know we're out of time, but you are all welcome to send me any questions, and I will try the best to get a good answer or direct you to someone who has a better answer.
And thank you again, Kalia. And I'm gonna pass it off to Diana now.
Yeah, and I just want to know, Gabrielle and Marina, your hands are still up, but they're from earlier, right? Okay, perfect. Well, now we're getting into our 5 minutes.
Sí, es de antes.
Okay, so 5-minute break. So 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. We'll meet back at 7:25, and then we'll continue with the SERP community boundary with Alicia and Steve from BACMed. So see you at 7:25.
Ain't funny that the way you feel shows on your
Bye. All right. So Anna, if you could go back to sharing the screen so we can have Alicia and Steve. Go for it, Alicia.
Great. Welcome back, everyone. Again, my name's Alicia Shao. And today, Steve Reed, who's with our Assessment, Inventory, and Modeling Division, we're going to provide an update on the SERP boundary. Next slide. So as we discussed at our last meeting, the SERP community boundary is required for the SERP. It describes the area where important information about the community lives, such as the people who live and work there, their lived experiences, perspectives, and also where the land use information will be collected. It's also important because future steering committee members will be selected from this area. The SERP emissions inventory boundary is important as it describes the areas where all sources are identified, where the emission reduction strategies are developed that include local, regional, and state level actions. And I'll pass it to Steve to discuss the emissions inventory and boundary.
Thank you, Alicia. So yeah, last month we also talked a little bit about the emission inventory boundary and specifically how it needs to be somewhat larger than the community boundary to capture sources that might lie just outside the community, but have air quality impacts within the community. So the emissions inventory boundary is generally defined as a rectangle that bounds the community boundary and has a little bit of a buffer. And you can see here that it's composed of these little squares or grid cells that are taken from CARB's statewide modeling domain. And we do that because some of the emissions estimates are drawn from data that's prepared for air quality modeling. And so we line it up with that modeling domain. In May, we also talked about specific sources of concern to make sure that they would fall within the proposed boundary. And one good piece of feedback we got from all of you is that it's actually easier to start with an inventory of sources and then review that list and review that inventory to see if anything is missing. And as this slide says, we do need an emission inventory as kind of a first step before we can proceed with other technical work. So what we're proposing to do is go ahead and develop a draft emissions inventory using this preliminary boundary that's shown here on this slide, and then provide that data to the steering committee to review. We're thinking that will happen in August. And then based on feedback from the committee and the review of that draft inventory, we can make changes or add sources later if there are other concerns that crop up, things that might fall just outside the boundary that we still want to evaluate in terms of their impacts within the community. So that's what we're thinking going forward. And if we go on the next slide, what we'd like to do now is just take any questions on the emission inventory boundary and particularly just see how you feel about that, going ahead and developing a draft inventory with this preliminary boundary and providing that data to the team to review, comment on, summarize, and so forth.
Thanks, Steve. So yeah, we wanted to make this space here if folks have any questions. Charles, I see your hand up.
As always, I defer to community first. So if anyone of our fellow steering committee members has anything to ask or to clarify, that you have a clarifying question, we want you to be clear on what this work is. So please feel free to ask that question or those questions. Any hands up, Deanna?
Just yours.
Okay, so well, let me ask my question then. I want to know, are the marijuana cultivation companies as an industry going to be included in this? Because this industry has already proven to be a mass polluter when they were running their diesel engines. And now that they can't run those diesel engines anymore, they're taxing the power grid. But at the same time, they're expelling those toxins from their plants into our water source. And so I would like we mentioned boundaries and stuff like that. Man, I just think it's time that we look at a industry and what is brought to our community, especially recognizing that that industry is mostly rich white-owned companies, again exploiting our communities. And so I would like to know, in the interest of equity, how we can use our SERP to rewrite those injustices.
Yeah, that's a good question, Charles. And my understanding is those facilities you're talking about would fall within this proposed boundary. And the question would be which of them and what operations or processes within them are covered by Air District permits. So any stationary facility that is permitted by the Air District would automatically be included in the inventory. We would also include mobile sources such as all on-road traffic, off-road aircraft, off-road construction equipment, things of that sort. There may be some smaller sources that are not covered by the inventory because they're just too small to require a permit, or things like residential sources that might be too small to quantify the emissions for. But in general, yeah, I would assume that all of those facilities, particularly if they have diesel engines, would fall within the inventory.
So do we have any other questions before we move on?
Yeah, thanks, Charles, for helping to facilitate. Steve just mentioned, what we wanted to propose here, and to have folks, continue that conversation about having Air District staff to prepare a draft emissions inventory, and to be brought, for that to be based on the SERP emissions inventory boundary and to be brought back for review. So wanted to see how you all feel and if you're ready for that draft emissions inventory to be prepared. And so I see Tanya's hand up. Pass it to you. Tanya, if you're speaking, you may be on mute.
Oh, hi. Yes, no, sorry, I didn't realize you recognized me. So is the boundary a map that was shown earlier, or can you push it back to that slide so we can see it? I'd like to see it if possible.
Yeah, can we go back one slide? So yeah, if you see here, there is the draft community boundary is shown, and then we have this network of squares that sort of surround that. And so all of the sources that fall within that network of grid cells or squares would be included in the emissions inventory. So yeah, it would be based on this map.
Can you tell me where the top of it is? Like I can see that it's going all the way down to the water, but what line or what street is the top of it following? Is that up to MacArthur, or is that?
It falls just above the 580 essentially. So the 580 sort of cuts through the top of the community boundary, and then we extend for a little bit of distance above to make sure that we get all of the 580 freeway in it. That was one of the considerations.
Got you. That's exactly what I was trying to understand. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And so yeah, I see there's a question in the chat too. It is, yeah, basically everything that is in purple, orange, and green, yeah, all of it anything that you see in this kind of shaded color would be included.
So Alicia, we back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Charles. Yeah, so wanted to see if there's any other questions and if folks had any concerns about having the draft emissions inventory prepared. As Steve mentioned, any additional sources to be added later or can be evaluated later. So this is really a good first step for us to get the technical work started. So we just wanted to hear from you all if you're ready to get that work started. If it sounds like a good idea, maybe could we get some reaction, some thumbs up? Or if there's no concerns, maybe that can be a sign that folks are ready as well. Tanya, I see your hand up. I can pass it to you.
I just have one quick other question. So in addition to the boundaries, you're also voting on the inventory, is that my understanding? Or just one or the other or both? Are you voting on the boundaries, the inventory, or both?
So I think just for tonight, we wanted to get the go ahead to develop the draft inventory for the boundary that we showed. I think the community boundary is still under development or still under review. So Alicia, maybe you can confirm that. But tonight we'd just really be talking about going ahead with the draft emission inventory and providing that in August.
Yes, that's correct. I don't know if Anna, we can go back to slide 33. Just to be a little bit clear. So last month we talked about 2 SERP boundaries. The SERP community boundary is one in which we're talking about one that describes the community, and we're actually going to be continuing talking about the community boundary and having an activity, continuing our activity around that. And then what we're talking about in terms of preparing the draft inventory will be based upon the SERP emissions inventory boundary, which on the next slide, can we go to the next slide, is the rectangular grid here. So we're just asking if folks want to get the work started so that staff can prepare a draft emissions inventory that's based on the rectangular emissions inventory boundary grid. So yeah, I did see, I hope that answers your question, Tanya.
Yes, it does. Thank you so much. And appreciate you giving me that information.
And Alicia, one of the things I think would have helped make things a little bit clearer for everybody if that map had been a little bit more graphic and was able to show at least a satellite view of the area instead of just square.
You muted yourself, Charles. You mentioned area in the square and then you got muted.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was saying that had it been overview of the area, a map, then people can actually see the streets and the places that that we're talking about, as opposed to the shapes and colors that they were presented. I'm just thinking that that would have made it a little bit clearer for people.
Yeah, that's helpful, Charles. And we do have that in the activity that we had folks participate in at the last meeting, and that we're continuing to participate for the SERP community boundary. So wondering perhaps if that would be helpful to share screen, I can show that, and that shows the two boundaries in relation to each other. I do see Misha's hand up. I can pass it to her. Misha, you're
I'm muted.
There
Yeah,
you go.
sorry about that. I'm everyone, just for an introduction. I work for the Air District. I'm an assistant counsel there. And Alicia, I think it would be helpful just to explain what the draft inventory is, and very generally, and what it's going to contain or what it entails. Even for me, like, I would like to know that. Thank you.
Yeah, so the draft inventory will basically quantify how much emissions are being produced by all the different emission sources within the community. And so it will be probably like a spreadsheet type format, and each row will be an emission source, and you'll be able to see how many tons per year of different pollutants are being released by all of the different sources within the community. And again, it will cover permitted stationary sources, cars and trucks, off-road mobile sources like aircraft, construction equipment, that sort of thing. So it would just basically be a database of emission sources and how much emissions they produce annually.
Thank you, Steve.
So Alicia, I guess we back to you now.
Hey, maybe we can come back to this question. And yeah, it might be helpful in just kind of recapping the activity that we did last month and some of that information, and that might also help as we move into the activity. Maybe we can go back to this question and see what folks think. So thanks, Anna. So just wanted to give folks a reminder at last month's steering committee, we asked for feedback from the steering committee about the SERP community boundary and the SERP emissions inventory boundary through an activity that we did. And we continued that feedback through email, where we left the shared documents open for folks to fill in and identify pollution sources, as well as community assets and areas in which they wanted to add to the community boundary, or areas that they wanted to remove from the community boundary. So during that time, we did receive additional feedback from steering committee members in between meetings. Next slide. And so what you see here is a snapshot of some of the feedback we heard from you all, the steering committee. The steering committee found identified pollution sources that are inside the SERP emissions inventory boundary. So these include, you'll see a list here, RNA trucking, pick and pull, et cetera. And the steering committee also identified community assets and areas that are outside the SERP community boundary. And these include Rancho San Antonio and San Antonio Park Field, Gwen Jackson Park, Highland Hospital, and the northern area along the I-580 and Coolidge Avenue. So just want to note that these lists are not complete, as it only includes the pollution sources and community assets and areas identified until these meeting slides were due for translation. So I did reach out to steering committee members to add or change any comments as necessary, and the information has been updated accordingly. So next slide. So now we want to build upon the feedback we received, in which we will continue the SERP boundary activity, but we wanted to focus on the East Oakland SERP community boundary. As I had mentioned, the pollution sources that you all have identified are within that proposed SERP emissions boundary, which we'll show you in the breakout group, the breakout rooms.
Actually, Alicia,
Yeah.
sorry to do this in audibly, but due to the time, I am going to suggest that we not do a breakout and instead stay in this main room.
Okay.
Sorry. Thanks for your patience, steering committee, but we are running short on time. So thought maybe we could stay here with Alicia facilitating, and we can use the materials for breakout room 1. Maybe Allison or I could support you. Allison, are you there? And then we could walk through the activity in the main room, and keeping in mind, Alicia, you're aware of the flow of the facilitation script. What does that work for you, and does that work for others?
If Alicia cool with it,
Okay.
that's it.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. I wanted to see who would be able to kind of peruse the Google map.
I
I can
Allison?
screen
Okay,
share.
thank you. Perfect. And if you need a note taker, I can help note take, and I'll use the breakout room 1 Google Doc.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you, team.
Love it when the plan come together.
That's right. So yeah, wanted to welcome you all back to this shared Google map. And so we have just want to show you the general setting. You'll see the map shows the SERP boundaries. And so we wanted to focus on the SERP community boundary, which is the one that's highlighted in green. So we can actually check off the emissions inventory boundary, which was the rectangular grid, which was highlighted in blue. So the SERP community boundary, which is highlighted in green, is located northwest of Fruitvale Avenue to 23rd Avenue, and south to include Oakland International Airport, southeast to the San Leandro border, and then northeast to the I-580 freeway border. So that's just to help orient you all to the SERP community boundary. And so we wanted to hear from you all. 2 questions if we can get through them. And this is a continuation of the boundary activity we did last month, as well as kept open for email. So first question is, can you identify community assets or areas that may fall outside of the SERP community boundary, which is the one highlighted in green? And so Anna is open to taking notes if you want to call them out or put them in chat. And just to remind folks, for community assets, they are referring to resources and strengths that are present within the community and can be used to enhance the quality of life for its residents. Examples of them can include parks, schools, hospitals, other resources that provide value to the community.
Alicia, this is Diana. What may be helpful, right now we're really zoomed out. Maybe, do you want to zoom in close to like Allendale or up on the western portion so that folks can take a closer look and start orienting themselves? So if they see, you know, like you said, a community asset, a park, a school that isn't included in the boundary, they can call out to it?
Yes, absolutely. Can I have some help with that? Or I can, yes, thank you. So you'll see we're at the northwest portion here. Great. Thank you, Jasmine. We do have that as a community asset, and that is included within the SERP community boundary. What we're looking for are assets that fall outside of the highlighted in green.
I think just to clarify that she might have been asked that what it was recognized as a recreation center and not as a actual park.
I see. Okay. Thank you, Charles. And so maybe we can go a little move to the east and maybe magnify it a little bit more so folks can see.
And we put the link to the Google map in the chat, as well as where I'm trying to note the feedback in the chat and verbally. There's a Google Doc. So if you want to, you know, drive yourself in the map or the document, feel free.
Great, Jamie. We noted Diamond Park here. Okay. So as you continue to peruse, we can keep going, you know, east, and just, yeah, spend a little bit more time there. And as folks are, you know, you can drive your own Google map and take a look at the Google Doc as well. I'll move on to the second question, which we wanted your input on as well, which is for the SERP community boundary. So that's the one that's highlighted in green. Are there areas that should be removed? Or are there assets that should be removed, if any?
If anyone wants me to move to a certain part of the map, I'd be happy to do my best to do it, or zoom out or zoom in.
Well, Alicia, I had a specific question in order for my own understanding. So for instance, Planning Justice, which is a garden, is in deep East Oakland and is surrounded by pollutant sources. How would that be defined as a community asset that is helping the community? How would you define that, just for me, because I don't understand it all the way yet?
Planting Justice, is that, can you elaborate more? Is that an organization? Is that a?
It's one of the largest. Yes, it's an urban farm. It's one of the largest urban farms in California.
Urban farms.
Yes.
Okay, so if you see that as a resource or strength that's present in East Oakland, I would, you know, we can write that down as a community asset if you think that's of value and it enhances the quality of life for the East Oakland residents.
Okay, so now my follow-up, so for my understanding, so now you identify that planning justice is a community asset, but we have illegal dump sites on one end, and we have burnt out vehicles and the railroad tracks surrounding it. So does that give it more of a priority for us to be able to get those entities to the table so we can clean that area up so that it does actually be the asset that it should be? Is that why we're doing this?
That's a great question, Charles. So in order to do our I would say our, community, we have to designate boundaries in order to garner information. So our community boundary is the one in which we will get information of the community. It's where the people are and where we also get land use information and health data. And then our emissions inventory boundary is a slightly larger boundary that covers the community boundary. And those are where we get information about the pollution sources and those that affect, the air pollution within the community. So we do need to define both of these boundaries, and that is what we are doing. That is what we've been discussing at our last community meeting and what we are continuing to discuss at this community meeting. So we've noted your planting justice as a community asset, and then also, understand that there are pollution sources that are adjacent to it. So thanks for those comments. I do see thank you, note takers, and thanks steering committee members. We're gathering your thoughts here, and those will help us with next steps. So I see Marina's hand is up, and I'll pass it to her.
Sí, solo quería, ¿verdad?
Yes, I wanted to add to what Charlie mentioned and said. I don't know if it's added here, the areas around the train tracks. I think it's a contaminated area because there's a lot of garbage. Sometimes there's like bottles of like kind of like an oil. So I don't know if in the map these areas are added to the areas that should be monitored.
Thanks, Marina. I think we will, thank you for your comment. And we will, kind of include that within our notes for this activity.
Hey, Allison, can I share screen?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay.
So thank you, everyone, for your flexibility and continued engagement in this activity. I just wanted to go over some next steps here. And so we will have the co-chairs, CBE and Air District staff will take steering committee's ideas from today into creating a SERP community boundary. And then if you all are ready at the July steering committee meeting, number 10, which is the next meeting, we will have steering committee members vote on the approval of the SERP community boundary. Also, I wanted to, I know we're at time, but wanted to see if folks are ready, we would want to propose having Air District staff start the technical work and prepare the draft emissions inventory that's based on the SERP emissions inventory boundary. And so I will pass it to whoever is next to close this out.
And so, of course, everyone, we will be looking for our feedback on this meeting. We really want to know what you think and feel about this, about our meetings. And did you feel like you learned something today? Were you able to participate? And do you feel like now you understand our mission a lot better? And then we will be having our next meeting will be Thursday, July 13th, 2023. And if I forgot or anything, please, one of our teammates, please jump in.
And just to reiterate, we will be forwarding some emails to you regarding Michaela's statement right after. And we will have our EJ announcements as well. We're sorry we had to cut that portion off. We had a lot to fill in, but we thank you guys so much for hanging in there with us. Thank you so much. You guys have a wonderful night and an incredible summer.
Yeah,
And-
thank you so much. Go
Yeah, I
ahead.
just want to note
Yep.
there's an accessibility poll that we've shared with you. We've sent a reminder email and we can send another one. I think there's only been about 10 of you that filled it out. We want to get a better understanding of the different support you all need for the next year. So thank you.
And that means all of us who are not technologically savvy, please feel free to ask for help because we all need it sometime. And so thank you guys for another great meeting and for the full participation we felt today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We felt the love, definitely. Enjoy your summer, people.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yes, have a
Bye-bye.
good one.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
If the staff can stay behind, please.